In the dark annals of the American Cosa Nostra, names like Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, and Vito Genovese evoke images of cold-eyed killers and shadowy masterminds. However, Willie Moretti, the powerful underboss of what would become the Genovese crime family, occupied a different space in the public imagination. Known for his wit, his affinity for the limelight, and his deep connections to the entertainment world, Moretti was the friendly face of the Mafia. Yet, in a world built on the rigid foundation of omertà, the code of silence, his greatest asset eventually became his death sentence. His life and eventual execution represent one of the most poignant examples of how the Mafia deals with internal instability. Guarino Willie Moretti was born in 1994 in Bari, Italy, before his family emigrated to the United States, settling in New Jersey. Unlike many of his contemporaries who rose through the ranks of the street gangs in New York's Lower East Side, Moretti carved out his kingdom across the Hudson River. By the 1920s and 30s, New Jersey was a fertile ground for the underworld, and Moretti was its gardener. He became a key ally to Frank Costello and Lucky Luciano during the formation of the modern mafia structure following the Castellamarese War. Moretti was more than just a soldier, he was a strategist. He recognized that the proximity of New Jersey to New York made it the perfect staging ground for illegal gambling, bootlegging, and labor racketeering. His influence over local law enforcement and politicians in Bergen County was so absolute that he operated with a level of openness that was rare for high-ranking mobsters. Under his watch, New Jersey became the safe harbor for the New York families. Moretti's historical significance is often tied to his role as a bridge between the underworld and Hollywood. He was a man who loved the company of stars and took a personal interest in the careers of rising performers. The most famous of these associations was with a young singer from Hoboken named Frank Sinatra. According to historical accounts and FBI files, Moretti was instrumental in Sinatra's early success. The legendary story, later immortalized in literature and film as the tale of Johnny Fontaine, involved Moretti intervening in a restrictive contract Sinatra held with bandleader Tommy Dorsey. While the cinematic version involved a deal they couldn't refuse, the reality was rooted in Moretti's terrifying reputation. It was this influence that helped launch Sinatra into the stratosphere of American culture, and Moretti remained a silent, protective shadow over the singer's career for years. Moretti lived a life of luxury that he didn't bother to hide. He resided in a grand mansion in Hasbrouck Heights, New Jersey, where he was known by neighbors as a generous, jovial family man. He was the Zelig of the mob, appearing in the background of major cultural moments, always smiling, always impeccably dressed, and always dangerous. The tragedy of Willie Moretti began not with a rival's bullet, but with a biological betrayal. In the years following World War II, Moretti began to exhibit erratic behavior. He was suffering from advanced neurosyphilis, a condition known in the underworld as the old bug. At the time, the disease was devastating to the brain, leading to cognitive decline, loss of inhibition, and bouts of dementia. For a high-ranking member of the Mafia, losing one's mental faculties is a liability far greater than a police investigation. Moretti began to talk. He didn't necessarily rat in the traditional sense, but his natural gregariousness, amplified by his illness, led him to speak too freely about the inner workings of the honored society. He started greeting strangers with excessive warmth and, more alarmingly, discussing business matters in public spaces where he could be overheard. The breaking point came in 1950 and 1951, when the United States Senate established the Kefauver Committee to investigate organized crime. These hearings were among the first to be televised, bringing the reality of the Mafia into American living rooms. Most mobsters, including Frank Costello, took the Fifth Amendment or sat in sullen silence. Willie Moretti did the opposite. When he took the stand, he treated the senators like old friends at a social club. He cracked jokes, laughed at the gravity of the proceedings, and spoke with a candor that sent shivers down the spines of his associates in New York.
While he avoided specific admissions of murder, his relaxed attitude and admission of knowing every major underworld figure confirmed the existence of a national crime syndicate, something the Mafia had spent decades trying to deny. To the public, he was an entertaining character. To the Commission, the Mafia's governing body, he was a ticking time bomb.
By late 1951, the power dynamics within the Genovese family were shifting. Vito Genovese, a ruthless and power-hungry strategist, was looking for any excuse to weaken Frank Costello's faction. Moretti was Costello's most loyal and powerful ally. Genovese argued that Moretti's mental state had made him a security risk that could no longer be managed. The Commission met to discuss the Moretti problem. It is one of the few instances in Mafia history where a hit was allegedly characterized as a mercy killing. The leadership argued that Moretti was a shell of his former self, and that his execution would prevent him from spending his final days in a prison cell or an asylum, while also protecting the secrets of the organization. Even his close friend, Frank Costello, seeing the inevitability of the situation and the threat to his own position, was forced to acquiesce. On the morning of October 4th, 1951, the end arrived with deceptive normalcy. Moretti, ever the social butterfly, went to lunch at Joe's Elbow Room, a small restaurant in Cliffside Park, New Jersey. He was joined by 4 men whom he considered friends and associates. There was no tension at the table. They shared food and conversation in the quiet suburban eatery. As the meal concluded, the atmosphere shifted instantly. While the restaurant staff were in the kitchen, the 4 men drew their weapons. Moretti was shot multiple times in the head and face at point-blank range. He died instantly, slumping over the table where he had just been laughing. The gunman walked out of the restaurant and vanished into the New Jersey morning. The hit was a message of clinical efficiency. There were no witnesses who dared to speak, and the quiet removal of one of the most powerful men in the country was handled with the same cold precision that Moretti himself had once commanded. Willie Moretti's funeral was a testament to his strange standing in society. Thousands of people lined the streets, and the floral arrangements were so numerous they required several cars to transport. It was the end of an era, the transition from the flamboyant, high-profile celebrity mobsters to the more insulated, secretive era of the mid-20th century. His death also cleared the path for Vito Genovese to continue his assault on Frank Costello's leadership, eventually leading to Costello's retirement and the renaming of the family. Moretti's life serves as a stark reminder of the paradox of the Mafia, a world that rewards loyalty and charisma, but ultimately values the survival of the business above any human bond. In the end, Moretti was a victim of the very system he helped build. He was a man who lived by the gun and the handshake, only to find that when his mind began to fail, the handshake was withdrawn, and only the gun remained. He remains a singular figure, a mobster who was killed not for his failures or his betrayals, but for simply being unable to stop talking in a world where silence is the only currency of survival.